So thank you very much for the invitation, for speaking to you. First of all, I have to apologize for my English, which is not very good, so I hope your English is good enough so as to understand my Spanglish. I am Francisco Insa. I am teacher of moral theology at Santa Croce University in Rome, and before my ordination I studied medicine and then I specialized in psychiatry. So after my ordination and when I began teaching at Santa Croce, from teaching moral theology, I have also studied, published and taught on psychology and Christian formation, because I think that modern psychology has a lot to say to a formator, to a Christian formator. In this lesson, I would like to speak about an age that, in my opinion, is very important, that is the young adult. People who are beginning their first steps in the market of the world, and then they have to compatibilize with the other aspects of their life. In this case, I am going to speak on the compatibilization of that activity in work with the vocation of Opus Dei as numerary or associate. I would like to structure this lesson in 3 points. First of all, I want to speak on the identity, because the Father wrote us a letter a couple of years ago about identity. And I have spoken so many times discourses like your identity is, and you are like given per discount that you have already incorporated that identity. But identity, I think it is very important that the Father has spoken us about that. But it is a concept that is psychological. It is not aesthetical, spiritual. So I think that if we deepen a little bit on what identity means from a human point of view, it will help us to improve the comprehension of our own identity as Opus Dei members. Then we will speak about how to develop that identity in our actual vocation and the age that we're going to study. And finally, we're going to speak about the crisis and risk that this stage have. So let's speak about identity. What is identity? In general, we can say that identity is the answer to 2 questions. What am I and who am I? We can say that identity is developed. Obviously, it is not the same identity of an old man, an adolescent, a child, and a young adult. So they all have the sense that they are the same person, but at the same time they know that they have changed a lot. I like very much the definition of identity by this psychologist who's called Erik Erikson. He's Danish-American, and he says that identity is the addition of 2 aspects. First of all is inner sameness. The very fact that one knows that he's the same throughout all the ages, all the stages of his life. So I am the same as I was a child, as I was an adolescent, as I was a young adult, because I am not anymore a young adult. But it is also a continuity not only inside myself, but also on the significance that other people has on me. And this is very interesting, because an identity that is not in some way shared by the people who knows me is not an identity completely integrated. And speaking specifically, I'm going to speak mixed the human and the supernatural, because otherwise I would have to do a very longer speech. So I will try and concentrate making parallels between the human and the supernatural and vocational. So a person that has friends, family and so on, and they don't recognize him as what he says, what he wants to be, in this case a numerary and associate of Opus Dei, I think that identity is not completely developed. It means, as example, when I began working in the hospital, I was asked, who are you, where do you live, etc. I have some prudence or pudor, or as you want to say, as explaining all the things I had to say. I'm numerary, I'm going to get married, I work for a Catholic institution, and so on. Psychiatrists, there are good Christian between psychiatrists, but the atmosphere in my hospital was not really very Christian. Not anti-Christian, but really not specifically Christian. So I thought that I wouldn't be able to explain who I am if I didn't say that I was an Opus Dei member. And then I explained that. Some people reacted better than the others, but it helped a lot to behave with naturality. When I was working all day because I had to be in the emergency room, sometimes I said, I'm going, and if I have a trust with the people, I said, I'm going to a chapel of the hospital for doing my prayer, or I am going to Mass, it was early in the morning. And people accepted it. Instead, because there was continuity. Well, I apologize if I put examples of my own life, but I want this lesson to be vivid, that it is experiential. So I would speak about my experience with my own life and with the people that have spoken with me. So imagine that I said that, well, I'm too shy, I prefer to have more trust with the people before saying that I am a Opus Dei member. So I would have to hide my identity to do my prayer, to go to Mass, or I would have to not go to Mass because I would be embarrassed if I had to do explanation. Where are you going? Do I have to be? Okay, I think so. With naturality, without forcing things, it is important to say, and then you have the opportunity also to explain who you are, what you do, so you open the doors for doing apostolate. But identity, we can do also a parallel from a young numerary associate that is beginning his life in the work with an adolescent, because an adolescent is beginning to have his own identity. He has been taught a lot of things at home by his parents. We at home don't say swords or bad words. We at home are all of this political ideology, of this football team. We are all, we behave, we have our history, and so on. And usually child accepts it peacefully, no problem. But then arrives the adolescent crisis, which means that he judges all that identity and he chooses what he wants to do or not. In so many things. He begins a little rebel. He says, okay, you parents, dad and mom, go to Mass, but I have to want to go to Mass by myself. And then he puts into judgment all that identity and he chooses what he wants to be. It can be more or less similar to what was taught by the parents, but surely he won't ever be exactly as he has been taught. But he will be more himself. So he has to adapt the family identity to his personality. We go again to our parallel. We have been taught a lot of things from our initial formation. What a numerary is. As I began, our identity is, but then I ask any of you, what is your identity? How have you incorporated all the things you have studied, you have learned, that you have heard, with your biography, with your personality, with your interests, and so on? I will put some example about that. So, Identity is something that initially comes as given. Someone offers you. Then it goes into crisis, and from a human point of view, it comes in adolescence. But in my experience, from a numerary or associate, and for so many vocations, also religious life, priest, and so on, it comes in the first years of vocation, after the initial formation. In this case, in your ages, when you finish university and you begin a more autonomous life. It is chosen. I want to be this, I want to be that, but it is not like a block that I accept completely. I have to, I couldn't say change, but at least adapt to me. And then it is internalized. It is very interesting because all the formation that a child receives usually is like a label, like a piece of paper that is put on the screen, on the skin. But then it has to be incorporated and transformed into a tattoo, which is a part of you, like the football players, that they are all full of tattoos that last for the rest of their lives. And sometimes they repent of those sometimes horrible tattoos. But anyway, we have to change a label in a tattoo, and it requires time. It cannot be automatic. And from the point of view of the formators, it requires patience and respecting the times of the different people. And then it is built. I can choose what I want to be, but then I see that I am not that. So I have to behave like as I were to become that. If I want to be a good person, and I'm not such a good person, I have to behave as if I were, and little by little, growing in virtues, I will become a good person. Okay? So we have said that identity has a lot of aspects. We can say all the biography, personal interests, and so on. But they are like disorganized, chaotic, and any one of us have to put a hierarchy in those values. Let me put a simple example. My football team, the team I support from my childhood, is Betis from Seville, which is my city. If you don't know it, I recommend you to travel to it because it is the most beautiful city in the world. So, the last football match of the Betis I watched in the field was when I were about 14 years and 5 months. I mean, more or less 1 month before I incorporated to the work. Since then, as a part of my vocation, I knew that numeraries associates don't go to spectacles. So I wouldn't go. I wouldn't be able anymore to go to the field to see in live my football team. Okay, does it mean that I'm not a supporter of Betis anymore? Not at all. This is an important part of my life. It means that I have to live as a Betis supporter and a numerary. And then I have to choose. I have to say what is more important for me. To be a standard supporter that goes to the field, that lives all the weekend for that, or is it more important for me to be a numerary? So I will, surely, I know what are the football players, I know how the results, I know who has scored, and I see the highlights in YouTube every week. So I spend some time every week to my team, and every day, every few days for knowing the news. But I know that it is more important for me to be a numerary. So if I am in a retreat, for example, I cancel the news from Betis and I wait for a week because it is more important for me to do well my retreat than to have the last news of the Betis. I said it is a silly example for you, not for me. But let's say, what about if we don't speak about soccer, but if we speak about the work and the promotions, if we speak about other interests, other values, other things that I like, my blood family, my friends, the possibility of becoming an important person in society, and so on. So, part of building society is building that hierarchy. And it is not discounted that vocation will be at the top. It is something that any of you have to choose, has to decide, and then has, as we have said before, has to build. For attempt error, tenting, and sometimes I fail, sometimes I do the right things, and then I reprogram the GPS so as to go in the direction that I want to go. Okay, so how can we formators and also how we promote as subjects develop our identity? First of all, present an attractive ideal. Vocation is relationship, personal relationship with God. It's a way of identification with Christ and a way of participating in His work of redemption. And this is very attractive. So, first of all, present the ideal. But then you have to present also it in a realistic way. It has also the difficulties, it is also the way of the cross, it has renounces and so on. So we are not in Wonderland. We are all, well, but not very much as married people, but obviously it has. Show ways to achieve the ideal. And I think this is the most important thing that formators can do. Not only say what you have to do, but say how you, personally you, with your capacity, with your virtues, with your faults, with your weaknesses, how can you achieve that ideal? Our father used to say, to help the soul to want. And sometimes some people in the debate has told me, well, everybody that is incorporated to the work, that wants to follow a vocation, all of them want, yes. But remember that point of the way. Do you want as a mother wants his child, as avaricious wants money, and so on? So it is another way of saying, okay, you want, but is it really at the top of your hierarchy? And do you want to subordinate other beautiful, great things to that great ideal that you want to be the top of your identity? And then you have done some mention, respect times. People has different times. And so we have to go and that slope, at sometimes a slippery slope, but go little by little, but sometimes we can go fast. Not always, we have to go slowly. And then we find the hard question. Until this moment we have spoken about beautiful things, but what about if somebody sees that he don't want? That he says, yes, I would like, I want, but I see that the reality is that your hierarchy is not what it should be. I give you time, I give you opportunities, I trust you really. But there is a moment in which I have to say you have really to choose, because we cannot, it wouldn't be honest for you to prolong a time in which you are not in or you are not out. You say you want to have that identity, but in the reality, in your very acts, in your daily life, you are not living, you are not sacrificing, you are not subordinating other things to that first idea that you had to do. In that cases, there is a moment, without hurry, in which a formator has to say, please choose, but not for me, not for the work, not for the institution, but for you, because you need to have a unity of light. Otherwise, you will become crazy, and you will get crazy all the people around you. Some risks on formation, from that formation for helping people to build their identity. First of all, indoctrination. Telling people you have to think like this. Obviously, it is not a good formation. People have to maturate, has to incorporate, has to make their own that formation that we give. Worse, the manipulation. Do what you don't want to do. We go again to our Father. Make the soul want. He himself has to want. I can present the ideal, I can encourage, I can facilitate, but he must want. If he doesn't, we're losing our time and perhaps we're hurting people. And then the conveyor belt. It is people from these first years in the work and the age of the incorporation at the work market. He told me, I have thought that I feel as if I were in a conveyor belt. Because my parents are supernumeraries, I studied in a school led by the work. Then I went to the club and then to the Center of San Rafael, and I was a good guy. So I used to say always yes to the. Do you want to come to the camp? Yes, I want. Do you want to do a time of prayer? Yes, I want. Do you want to go to circles? Yes, I want. Do you want to whistle as a numerary? Yes, I want. Do you want to go to the Center of Studies? Yes, I want. Do you want to go to that other city? Yes, I want. Do you want to be the assistant director of the center? Yes, I want. Do you want to go to the Roman College? Yes, I want. Do you go to... Stop. So he said, all my life is like pudding and saying yes to everything without integrating, without incorporating all that thing, without thinking. It is not necessary to say no to any of those questions. It is important that the question is yours. And that you say yes because you really feel that. And because perhaps you are not sure at 100%, but you trust the people who know you. But think, and if someone of you who are hearing me think that he has lived up to now in a conveyor belt, please press the red button. Stop your life. Think. See what you still have not incorporated, those things that we all have that are only labels but have not been absorbed in the skin and became a tattoo, and if needed, ask, change, adapt things in your life. Otherwise, probably there will arrive a moment, can be the 40s, that has their own difficulties, can be the 50s, or can be a sense of alienation that is not good for anybody. Okay, so we have to distinguish between what I am, what I could be, what I would like to be, what I think I should be, and what other people tell me I should be. It means it becomes very complicated, but you can see that they have slightly or not so slightly differences. And if those differences in our own life are too big, then we will have problems with our identity. If I mix, if I confound what I really am with what I would like to be, then there is a mess. Because I think that I have already incorporated those things, but I really don't. if I confound what I would like to be with that things that other people tell me I should be, and it is also different. So we can also ask ourselves, what are my ambitions? Those ambitions that in reality, in the profound of my mind, of my brain, of my soul, are at the top of the hierarchy, and they shouldn't be. Okay, don't worry. We have said that, first of all, make it conscious and accept that that is your very reality, and then you will be able to change, to adapt the things that you want to change, not the things that other people tell you to change. So, identity. How can we build make that identity grow? I think the best way of making it grow is through relationships. And I want to speak about 3 kinds of relationships: work, family, and friends. First of all, we can speak about personality only because it has to be with identity. Personality for me is a stable way to relate to oneself, to others, and to the world. So personality is relationships mainly, or at least the way I can see the personality of anyone is watching, seeing, observing the way he relates with other people. So let's go a little echo. Work. The incorporation into the labor market has its challenges, because it is very challenging, but it is very satisfying, because there is an exponential learning curve. At the beginning of the work, you find usually your first patient, your first client, your first case, and so on, and you learn a little, and you learn a lot. And the fatigue threshold is very high. I mean, you need to work a lot to get and to feel tired. So you like your work, I hope you like your work. You can work a lot without becoming exhausted, and then you have a good recovery capacity. So it is the best combination so as to get exploited in the work, which is the usual thing that happens in the first years of work. You have usually few responsibilities because you are in the lowest of the scale. You have rewards. One of the rewards is after so many years, depending on your family, you have money. You earn your salary, and it is a great reward. The promotions in the work, the appreciation by your partners. You have economic autonomy, and people in the first years of work usually don't have stable commitments, but numerary has commitments. And this is important because when you want to compare with the other people with your own age, they say, oh, in the weekends I'm completely free, in the afternoon after work I'm completely free, and you say I'm not completely, well, obviously I'm free, but I have a lot of responsibilities because then I go to the center and I have to do the work. And it can be a reason for crisis. So relationships at work, very important. There is a common goal, there is cooperation, you know different people, different ways of working, and it enriches you, and you need to do team working. You don't choose the relationships, so you have to receive the people that comes to your office, and you have to learn to work with them. Another discovery is dealing with colleague women for a people who wants to live in celibate. Obviously, women have not been excluded till that point in their life, in family, perhaps in the group of friends, obviously in the university, but in this moment you have to work with them. You needn't go on a study with a woman during university, but with a colleague, you have to work, you have to do meetings, you have to do conversations, sometimes you have to do a work meal, and it can all awaken some feelings that perhaps you didn't have before because you avoided women in the past. And you have to first know that it is normal, and then you have to be attentive if the heart you get in love or you begin erotizing that relationship and so on. So it is not danger. Women are not dangerous usually, but perhaps the danger, the possible danger is your heart. So you have to look at that. That's it, and then be sincere with you. And finally, work is the natural place for friendship to grow. So family. Obviously, when I speak family, I'm working on our family in the work. Family in all ambience, always from a human point of view, has irreversible ties. One is brother, sister, son, father, for all the life. It is not chosen. Well, obviously, one chooses his husband, his wife. He can choose how many children to have, but they cannot choose if the children will be male, female, if he will be more introverted, extroverted. They can. The politic family also can. It is not chosen. And there is a close existence. And there should be an unconditional acceptance. But you know that they will always be there. Even if we have a variable affinity that helps us to love the other with their defects and love their defects. This is a human family, and this is also the life family in Opus Dei centers. I don't choose who I'm going to live with. I have to live with them. I have to accept them. I have to be there all the time with them, even if there is an affinity different and a range of age also different. Okay, and family, we have friends that is based in something to share, a hobby, an affinity, an ideal, political ideology, anything, something that is found and accepted. It is not that I want to be friends with you, no, it is like getting in love. Making friends is something that I'm treating these people, and I see that we have become friends. First, we were only colleagues or neighbors. Now we have become friends. The same as happens between a boy and a girl. If we are separated, it tends to suffer atrophy for this disuse. It may arise in family and at work, with peers, mainly with peers. This is important. And mainly, and perhaps it is another risk in these ages in Opus Dei vocation, that we have a great range of people we treat. We have the people in our work, we have perhaps the people in the apostolic works, if we teach in college, we have the students, we have the parents which are older than me, but seek always, or try and seek and have good friends in your range of age, because you will be like them. If your friends are younger than you will get infantilized. If they are older than you will lose your youth, and it is not a good thing. So can there be asymmetrical friendships? Surely yes. But they are not the best friendships for a person. Or at least, I can say more in a different way. If all my friendships are in a different age, then perhaps I have a problem with my social skills. So we have found three cycles of relationships The problem is that sometimes those fields overlap. So that my wife is my boss, that the director of the center is obviously my brother, but he's also my spiritual director, or he's the assistant director of the school in which I work, so he's my boss, and so on. It is not something to be avoided, but it has its risks, mainly when one of both don't respect the concrete ambient in which they are. Now we are brothers. We have to behave like brothers. And I cannot behave now as your boss or a director, because otherwise both relationships will suffer. The asymmetrical relation of director and resident of the house, but also the fraternal dimension. And then we will arrive to the crisis of this age. It is like a summary of everything we have studied. What are the challenges in these ages? First of all, like in every human family, work-home balance. Work in my profession and home, family life, going to the doctor or being in the center and so on, and also apostolic work. I wouldn't say it is a problem, it is a challenge. Dealing with female colleagues, we have spoken about that. Not being at ease with internal job. In internal, I mean those jobs that perhaps I had not chosen from the beginning, but I have been asked to do them. Because I have been asked, can you do as director of this residence instead of working as a lawyer? Can you teach in this school instead of working as an economist? Can you go to a Roman college and become a priest instead of working as a doctor? And sometimes, it is a renounce, and I have to go back to the identity. I have to see, I have to think, is if I want to do that. Recognizing that it is a sacrifice, but I want to do that sacrifice because that is my family. And I am not doing anything different from a father, a mother family does. My sister-in-law has renounced to half of his or her salary because she needs half of the time that she had dedicated to her job till she had her first son. So if some of us numerally are asked to reduce our dedication to professional job, we are not doing anything different than what my sister-in-law is doing actually now. Okay, then we have the crisis of the spreading of limits, which is the crisis that comes when you incorporate with this trunk that we have set to the laboral market, and you see that you are not so brave as you wanted, that things are more different, and then you can become frustrated, cynic, and so on. Not feeling valued, the outsiders, when it is important, and it is not specific from us. It is the problem that has a husband that comes to home and he's very valorized and appreciated in his job, but his wife don't ask her about his successes. So it is the same problem in a center when the professional successes are ignored. We have to be attentive to those successes, and even from outsiders. Sometimes the centers are very focused on work, example centers that, some reference centers that in which many people work in a school, and there are one to numerate that work in other atmospheres, liberal professions, a doctor and a lawyer, and sometimes the get-togethers go very addressed to that point, and the outsider gets out of the daily life of the center. So it requires an extra effort from the other numeraries so as to attract them, so as to ask him, so as to be attentive. What are your successes? What are your expectancies? Which will be your promotions in your work? And obviously celebrating it as any family would celebrate it. The loneliness, and it is specific of celibate, even if we live in family and we have a great family life, there are moments of loneliness. And part of the challenges of a celibate is dealing with that loneliness. We have a lot of people with which to share our ambitions, happiness, and sadness. But there is a point in which one celibate people is with himself and with God, which is very important, because I'm focusing on the human part of that, but obviously if this is not supported by a solid interior life, it will fall down completely. St. Paul the VI said in his encyclical Sacerdotalis Celibatus, loneliness of a celibate person is not a real loneliness, because we are always with our Lord. Okay, then we have to deal with blood family in the same way as people who get married have to deal with. The mom, the dad wants them to be in all the circus family feasts, but that my brother say, "Mom, I cannot go because I have a wife and 3 children, so I cannot go to another city with all the family in the car." So this is the same problem that we numeraries have so many times. Being absorbed by the work, in this case by the apostolic work, that can be also a challenge. One sees that he cannot deal, he has a lot of responsibilities with the church, with the circles, and so on. And he has also to deal, to negotiate, to see if I can do it all, if I have to reduce, if I have to propose. But first of all, it requires to know oneself and to see if I am really satisfied with that, which must be the sense of my life. Remember, the hierarchy. And finally, the strong, rigid character. People in his 20s are very flexible, and little by little they become a little more rigid, because the character, the personality stabilizes. It is not so chaotic like an adolescent, but on the other side, it becomes less flexible. And it will lead us to the following chapter, that would be the crisis of the 40s. So I would like to finish with this point, very known, of the letter of the father, his first letter, in which he said that putting Jesus in the center of our life means reaching the person in all or her integrity. Intellect, will, heart, relationships. I think we have studied many of these things. We have put between brackets all the things that you can see here, which are freedom, life of prayer, and so on. We have the great risks, the voluntarism, the sentimentalism that we have to avoid, and that final sentence that I like very much. Teaching people, we said we have to teach people the means of integrating their identity, teaching people how to live with and accept their own weaknesses and the weaknesses of the people they live with. So thank you very much for your patience. I have been very happy to share this time with you.